And I should be live. I'm sorry, good people, I am a little bit later, but, well, a little bit. It's not going to be a big problem. I am sorry, though, because I totally lost track of time. It happens sometime. It's weird, though, because I'm sitting at the computer, but, yeah. Today, I am willing to explore something with you. And for the people who want to join me, obviously you're welcome in the Discord server. I have to move myself to the Saturday stream. I'm in the Saturday stream now, that's the ding you heard. If others want to join me, by all means, you are more than welcome. Michael, can you hear me well, mate? After all, you are my external sound guy. And in a moment, I want to talk to you about what is going on in our society. Are we seeing a push for alternative genders? And if we are, who's doing the pushing? And why? Now, obviously YouTube is making a good joke of things, because according to them, I have one person watching, yet at least 2 people currently active in the chat. So that is always funny to see. Anyway, now I'm not sure if the sound is well. And I have almost a minute delay. Well, that could be true. In all fairness, though, I did start later as well. As long as the sound is good. Audio is fine. There it's. Thank you very much. That's the word I wanted to hear. Okay, so today, I'm not sure how fast I will start, if I should give people time to join us or not. Hi there, Richard Beyer. And by the way, hi Ludicrous, hi Michael. And if Davey is still there, hi Davey. Today I wanted to talk to an interesting topic, or at least I think it is. Why are we seeing the push of alternative genders? And I think, well, obviously I could be wrong, but I really think that this comes from the same angle that sees a push for racial division, ethnical division, political division, and, well, let's be honest, all other forms of divisions. I'm glad that it says that there are 5 watching now, Richard. To me, it says, no, we're back to 1. But then again, it's YouTube, who cares? I mean, even if there's 1,000 people watching and it says only 1, I still don't give a hoot. Seems like a better word to use now. So there is something going on, and we definitely see this. There is a push to promote something other than the norm. Now, why am I calling this the norm? Not because I think it's the best thing, or because it's how it's supposed to be, but no, it's the norm because it's the norm. It's not the norm because we want it to be. It's not the norm because we prefer it to be. It's the norm because it's the norm. Reality is a thing. And we can pretend that that's not a case, but, well, we do so at our own peril. It's weird though, but people like to think that we all combined like Voltron. Well, could be it. Could be it. I have one massive viewer. No, I like Voltron better than Megazord, to be honest. I mean, I really love the old Voltron series. Anyway, and I've never really been a fan of what they're called, Power Rangers. Do the different genders require different types of toilets for elimination purposes? Why haven't the manufacturers of these toilets kept pace with the demand for different fixtures? Well, that's the thing. There's this thing called gender, and then there is this thing called sex. So far, I have not really found proof that there are more sexes. I mean, obviously I found something, because what can I tell you? This is the internet. And according to Scientific America, Scientific American, Sex Redefined, the idea of two sexes is overly simplistic, because now biologists seem to think there's a larger spectrum than just binary male and female. Actually, there are no biologists who think that. But never mind, they pretend that there are, because there are, I wanted to say mutations, but they're not even mutations. Because sometimes, when in what is it? When people are still zygotes or pre-zygote situations, we start life as possibly being two people. Possibly that might then go wrong, and out of those two people only one person is born, and that one person may have a combination of Y and XY chromosomes. And this is then seen as a new biological sex, but it's not. It's a mutation. It's the exception to the rule. Now, once that becomes a new rule, sure, I'm more than willing to admit that there are hundreds of thousands of people that are like that, but that's most likely not true, because these are things that happen once in a million. Now, considering that there are about 8 billion, well, 7 billion people in the world, that still happens a lot. I mean, we're still talking about thousands worldwide, which is absolutely true. But these are still not the norm. I'm sorry, if you're 1,000 out of a billion, you're already too small a percentage to be used as your own group. I'm sorry. Hi there, Green Badger. Let me see. I'm sorry, Michael, I didn't call you out. Hey, listen, I don't know who in the chat it was. I think it might have been you. It might have been Ludicrous. Now I have to scroll back. Bloody hell. That started talking about... Ah, yeah, it was Leprechaun. Fair enough. It was Leprechaun that started talking about Voltron, which is, by the way, a perfectly fine example. Never mind there. Anyway, and no, mRNA vaccines are not supposed to solve mutations. Now, I'm not going to talk about mRNA vaccines. I might have a topic that I might do next week, because there are some really strange things going on with those. But that's not what the stream of today is all about. What am I talking about today is the push for alternative genders. And that push for alternative genders basically comes from a very direct source. I mean, there are people who will tell you, well, as I said, there's an article I referred to. I might show it to you. Wait a second. First, I see if I can do this. I can't, because I'm an idiot. Come on. Oh, come on. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but I'm doing something wrong, which is always a good thing to show. Is it this one? Yes, it's this one. Oh, sorry, people. Opa, there we go. That's the article that talks about Sex Redefined. I'm not really going to go into it too deeply, but you can read it if you want to. At the high end, it might happen once every 2,000 birds. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. but it's most likely less than that. I don't have the precise numbers for that, I have to admit, but I think it happens even less than that. But yeah, sure, we're talking about worldwide 4 million people. I did read it and I can't find it fast now. You know what? I'm going to stop. I put the link there. You can check it if you want. The thing, however, is that mutations happen, and some mutations stay, and some mutations, well, don't. And this is what we see, for example, with the XY chromosome mutations. There are people that are born with XYY or YXY or whatever form it goes. I have no. I've read an article about this a few years ago. So we know that there are these deviations, but the children of these people most likely return back to either XY or Y. So yeah, it's a mutation. Now, are these mutations a reason to see a push for the alternative genders? Obviously, the answer to that is no. But don't get me wrong, I understand that people want to identify with different genders, and I think most of the people that doing the self-identifying with different genders are not at heart the problem. They are most likely the useful idiots that are being used to disrupt society. Now, why do I say it like that? The problem isn't that you identify with a different gender or sex, or that you identify as a different race, or that you identify as a different ethnicity. I mean, it's silly, but that's not a problem. You have every right to do so if you want to do so. The problem is that at this point in time, we are being forced to not only recognize that this is happening, but pretend that this is the new norm. Basically, we're talking about compelled speech. Now, why is that a bad idea? Well, it's a bad idea because if we claim that if people act in a certain way, others might find it offensive, if that's true in one direction, it must also therefore be true in the other direction. So if people that believe that they are of a different gender and they force people to adhere to their beliefs, because if they do not, they feel offended, then we know that there will be people on the other side who will feel offended for being forced to do just that. And I don't understand how there are people who can say it's okay to push gender diversity, but then at the same time say if you disagree with that, you are some kind of phobe. Freedom of speech and identity must be true for everyone. If it's only true for a small group, that means that one group is being oppressed by the other group. Am I blaming the people that identify as different genders for this problem? No, I do not blame them for this problem because they are, as I said earlier, basically being used. Okay, let's go back to the chat. It might be that such a chromosome abnormality might leave someone infertile or sterile as well. Indeed, you are correct. This is most often the case. If you have a chromosome imbalance, it will most likely, not always, but very most likely, leave you infertile. And welcome back, Davey. I didn't know you were gone. What should I ask Jordan Peterson, Richard, about the chromosome thing? Well, I wish I were on speaking terms with the man, but mind you, I think he's a brilliant person, don't get me wrong. I don't think he has the time to listen to every Tom, Dick and Harry on the world. And even though I think I'm way better than everyone else, obviously, I'm not in that ballpark. Maybe one day, maybe not. I mean, let's be honest, we're just the plebs. We are. Just like speaking out against the Catholic Church during the Middle Ages. Yes, very much so. The thing is, though, that the Catholic Church did have a sort of a majority position because a lot of people had joined the faith. But the people pushing the gender ideology and the racist ethnical ideologies and the political ideologies, most of these groups are not in the majority, even though they claim they are. Now, obviously, I can go back to terms like Bolshevik, because obviously the Bolsheviks called themselves the majority even though they weren't. But the patterns are very similar, which is also very scary if I'm really honest, because these people are being more or less pushed, I think pushed is a good word, to man the barricades. Hi there, Paolo. These people are pushed to man the barricades whilst not really understanding why they are there. Most of these people do not understand that pushing the barricades in one direction will eventually cause a backlash. Political correctness in America's newest form of intolerance, and it's especially pernicious because it comes disguised as tolerance. Well, George Carlin was right on that one, Green Badger. And this is a real problem. This is also why cognitive dissonance in our current society, in Europe, in America, but everywhere in the Western world, cognitive dissonance is really big. Why? Because people want to think of themselves as good mensch. And there's a small group of people that keep pushing the idea of you have to be political correct, you have to believe this, that, and the other. And if you do not, you cannot be a good mensch. And a lot of people will notice the disparities, disparities between what they are forced to believe and what they kind of believe themselves. But they can't step away from what they believe themselves, because if they do that, they give up on themselves. But they also can't speak out in favor of what they believe for themselves, because then they will be ostracized. So they kind of do turn against themselves. They stop talking what they think may be true, and then they start having problems which would fall within the frame of cognitive dissonance. And indeed, the will of the people, but nobody cares what the people want. This is very true, because if we talk about worldwide, I mean, most people are absolutely in favor of giving people that have, how do you call this? Listen, if you want to be gay, most people in Europe and in America don't really care. But if you want to be gay in their faces, they start having an issue. If you then also feel that they have to acknowledge you, you're basically forcing people. And that's never a good idea. And hi there, back Davey. I'm not quite sure what's going on with YouTube. It seems that the chat here is working well, but here the analytics aren't working well. I mean, I keep jumping from 1 to, at this point in time, 9 viewers. So yeah, there we go. The problem what we're seeing, or the problem that we are seeing this happening, is that what's going on is the destruction of one of the major things a society needs. A coherent and clear cultural basis for the majority. Now this sounds really weird, because people always think, well, but it was white people, it was that or the other. Now white people obviously is the easiest target nowadays, but that's not true. In Western culture, there are plenty of black people or Asian people or whatever ethnic minority you want to call out there that have achieved. Why? Because in our society, you are able and allowed to achieve. Is it your fault? Well, maybe, but that doesn't make it clear why my analytics keep going haywire, Davey. I doubt it's because of you. So, no, but back to what I wanted to say. So, if we know this, then there is an issue. If we kind of want to pretend that the world is in one way or the other, we're going to lose the nuance by saying, well, some people are this, some people are the other. We're not allowed to have that nuance, because that nuance creates understanding, creates respect. We are being pushed into a polarized society. We're not allowed to have nuance. We're not allowed to see different ways of looking at each other. We're not allowed to understand that people may have different points of view than the perceived majority. But that in itself is the very definition of intolerance. So why do we see a push of alternative genders? We see a push of alternative genders because we see a push of intolerance. But this push of intolerance doesn't come from the right-wing people or the religious people, which is pretty basically always has been the mainstay of the argument. Oh, well, Christians are intolerant to gays. Well, yeah, there might be some, but society at large is not. If we then point out that another religion might have more intolerance, for example, Islam, then we have to admit that not every Muslim is against gay people or gender alternative people. Alternative gender people? How the hell would you name that? I have a problem with calling people a gender though, because gender is a linguistic tool, not a biological one. Anyway, if we say, well, yeah, but people of certain cultures are perfectly all right in having a problem with that, but people of another culture are not, we are being shown the true cause of the push for alternative genders. Mind you, I'm not blaming the people that identify themselves as this, that, or the other, because most of these people aren't aware of what's going on. But there is something really weird when the only concept that is constantly being attacked by the push for alternative genders and the push for alternative ethnicities and different ways of self-identifying, the only thing that is constantly under attack is the predominant culture of the West. Basically, we are recognizing, we are seeing, we are witnessing the attack on the four O's. The hate on Christianity has done its job, according to Davy. Their wings were clipped with the Bible didn't match with reality. Not really sure if I understand you correct there, Davy, but I think you are. If I understand you correct, what you're saying is that Christianity has been made limp because a lot of proof has been given on the disparities within the Bible and reality. If that's what you're saying, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. It's kind of funny though that this has only been done for Christianity, not for Judaism, which has the same Bible, nor Islam, which comes from the same faith tree as well. So there is that. Dimitri says, I was trying to find the latest Globaliza the other day, and for 2021 there was a banana tree. Completely different than the real thing. I'm not quite sure if I understand you there, Dimitri. But okay, so what we can see is that there is a constant attack on the four O's in the Western world. I do not blame people that are transgender or gender something other, or they're transracial, or none of this nonsense. Do I think these things are nonsense? In all fairness, yes, I do. But you can still live a good life when you believe in that, when you feel that this is who you are. And I do wish you the best in the world. I'm not in favor of compelled speak. So I'm not in favor of forcing people to identify you the way you want to be identified. This is the same reason why I can't force people to identify me the way I want to be identified. They will identify me based on their experiences of me. And they might perceive me different than I want to be perceived. I cannot force perception. The only reason why people were able to force perception is because of power. If you have the power, you can force perception. But if you have the power, can you then claim that you're being oppressed? Are you not yourself the oppressor? So why are we seeing this push for alternative genders and, in all fairness, alternative ethnicities, etc., etc.? We see this because our societies, our communities, our culture is under attack. And it's under attack not by the people who do this. And this is the most important thing that people need to realize. It's not the transgender that wants to attack our society. They are merely tools, useful idiots. They do not realize the damage they are doing to themselves and to our society. Our society could pretty well survive with people being transgender. Now, there will be people that are transgender that will have a good time, and there will be people that will identify themselves as transgender that will have a bad time. Just like there are heterosexual people that have good times and bad times, because it's not about the group you belong to. Even though people like to think that this is the cause and this is the reason. It's because who you are as an individual. The push for alternative genders and alternative ethnical recognition and alternative religious considerations and political identities, these pushes are all just to polarize society further. Divide and conquer has been as old as who was it? The Prince. Who wrote The Prince again? No, I can't remember. Machiavelli. Sorry. And that was a very long time ago, and I'm pretty sure that he wasn't the first to come up with that idea. He's the most famous one because he wrote it down in a time that we can still remember books being written down. But I'm pretty sure someone must have explained this to him as well. The divide and conquer concept can only have one goal, and that is to disrupt our current society. Now, if we combine that with the concept of the four olds, or the attack on the four olds, which comes from Mao, and I'm not saying this is all because of China, don't get me wrong, but this concept comes from the concept of socialism. And socialism has once and again been proven to be out there to disrupt societies. Funny enough, once socialists come into power, the first thing that is being used is the concept of identity to purge society. There's a reason why in the old days people would say that the how do you call them? The rebellions, the rebels will become terrorists. They will be purged from the party. Because you will need, how do you call that? Obedient people to follow the new concept of society. Not the rebels. Because the rebels will recognize that, hey, wait a second, something has gone wrong. This is kind of what the Gulag Archipelago wrote about, Solzhenitsyn wrote about. Why? Because people started identifying with the new culture so much that they started blaming themselves and recognizing that, okay, you know what, maybe I am attacked by the new society in a negative way, but you know what, overall the concept is good. But after a while, people stopped doing that because, wait a second, why am I being blamed for CO2 global warming bullshit, when the people that tell me I'm wrong use private planes to go to whatever nice spot they have on the world that day to talk about how I'm wrong. But I don't have private planes. I don't fly around the world like they do. And the more people start recognizing this, the less influence the people pushing the attack on the four olds have on the rest of society. And this is why we see a constant push for alternative genders and racial ideologies. Because if there are constantly new things, it's very difficult to prove it wrong. And I don't say we should prove them wrong, because I don't really care and it shouldn't really be a matter. But it becomes a matter when these people start talking about how wrong we are. With we, I mean the rest of society. People who do and do not support the idea of, in this case, alternative genders. I truly wish people a happy life, whether they are of gender X, Y, or Z. I don't care. It's not important. But as soon as people are being compelled to say certain things or believe certain things, we have a serious issue. Because basically what is being told is you are not allowed to think for yourself. And if we are not allowed to think for ourselves, then how can we know what we're thinking? Well, you're being told what to think, so that's simple enough. You should just, what was it again? Listen and believe. Back to the chat. While I realize that Christianity may have exceeded its mandate, but when you see what's happening now, can you really say that we're completely wrong? Ludicrous said. Dave responds, although the cult may have been designed as a reaction against hedonism, it has shown how wrong it was, basically swapping one ideal for another. Modwayne, I would not divorce the fanatic individuals who cause violence from their responsibilities. Ultimately, those who use aggression, even at the behest of others, are still culpable. In this, I kind of totally disagree with you, Ludicrous. There's no doubt on that. But most people that believe that they are of an alternative gender do not fall under the category of fanatic. The fanatics are the one in power, or at least the ones that we see. We do not know who are behind them. I have nothing against Christianity, according to Davy. I think it was a reaction against Roman tyranny, but as you say, it has exceeded its mandate. Well, this is the thing with any group. If the hero lives long enough, he eventually becomes the bad guy of his own story. This is true for groups that will identify themselves as purely good. Basically, if these purely good identities are based on identity politics, they will kind of always turn bad. Because they have to. Because there is no ultimate way of doing things. It's all about the nuance. But people who push against the four olds cannot handle nuance, because nuance kind of makes it very difficult for them to push the narrative that they want. I mean, there has to be more than two sexes. Okay, well, is that true, or is it a nuance? It's a nuance. No, it has to be true. Well, if it's true, then prove it. We can't really. Then it can't be true, can it? Yeah, but we find nuances that prove that there are certain mutations. Fair enough, but then it's in the nuance. It's the constant doublethink that comes from the people that push these narratives. Guys, the history of Christianity is a complex thing. Yeah, on that you're correct, but that's true for every culture. What do I think about the lawsuit? Which lawsuit is that, Dimitri? I have no idea what you mean. I'm sorry. The difference is Christianity asks people to practice mercy and forgiveness. Ludicrous, I understand what you're saying, and I know there are lots of Christians that think like that. But unfortunately, even within Christianity, even within the Catholic Church, this is not true for everyone. Even within these movements, like Christianity was a movement too, that have the concept of goodness for society, even within these groups you will find the extremes. And once a group has the right to dictate to others how to think or feel, we're no longer in the realm of being good. And that's the difference. Now, don't get me wrong. I used to be, how do you call it, a radical or activist atheist. I've stopped doing that because basically I was just as wrong as the people I was complaining about, even though there are plenty of Christians who are inherently good people. This is true for Jews, this is true for Muslims, this is true for every other religion out there. But there are also people who will abuse their position. It's kind of like what the pushers of alternative genders do now. We are on the right side of history, you're on the wrong side of history. How dare you disagree or turn against us? What do I think about Trump's lawsuit? In all fairness, I haven't really given it much thought. I'm not quite sure how successful it will be. I think he's correct in stating that the movements we are seeing from Silicon Valley are indeed dangerous ones, and you could argue that the idea that it's individual companies that are breaking certain laws, or, well, I mean, the First Amendment doesn't apply to companies, it only applies to government. Yeah, you know what? I would almost say you're partly correct if it weren't for the fact that they are using a double standard, because sometimes they are upholding it and sometimes they are stopping other people from talking because it would interfere with what they consider good speech, which kind of means that they are no longer in favor of the First Amendment. Can companies be forced? I don't know. But can they be protected because they are platforms? Now that's an interesting topic. Having said that, I think Trump will lose, and I think the judges will rule in favor of the current hegemony of power, not because it's right, but because they are part of it. I'm sorry. Okay. Back to the chat for a second. Ludicrous, you're correct. There are people that work in the extremes, but the core tenets were supposed to be forgiveness and mercy. This is correct. I agree with you on that. My problem with Christianity isn't that the Bible is such a negative, how do you call it, negative document. It's what people made of it. And this is why I'm no longer a radical atheist or a activist atheist, because I have recognized that there are plenty of Christians that are indeed good people, just like people of other religions as well. That's why I also don't want to attack people that perceive themselves as having an alternative gender, even though some of these people may be antagonistic, may be somewhat aggressive in coming forward, but they too are merely trying to identify self. The problem becomes when other people have to do as they feel. The problem with Christianity, for example, is not the fact that people want to live as good Christians, but that they want to force other people to live as good Christians. And indeed, Green Badger, companies have been forced in the past, for example, baking the gay wedding cake. If I'm personally responsible for that, I would say that that is a crime. You're not to force a person to do something. I'm sorry, but that is tantamount to slavery. Well, I have my own company. Yeah, but you have to do what I tell you, and if you don't, you have a problem. I'm sorry, but that's slavery. If I go to a baker and I want him to make a special cake for my boy, for example, and they're like, for whatever reason, they're going to tell me, nah, not gonna happen. I can only offer them more money, but I cannot force them. The idea that I'm allowed to force them shows that there is no equality. And that equality is not on the side of the average person, it's on the side of the extremist. But the extremist isn't the norm. If you censor evidence of a crime like pedophilia, you destroy evidence. I think you do actually. And this is something that we see happening now with the corona situation as well. And this is something that we see with the sex identification thingy. There's lots of evidences being pushed aside or being pushed to not being seen, and with that they kind of destroy the conversation. We see a push for alternative genders because gender activists don't understand gender. That might be a very good way of putting it. Activists are always the problem for the cause they support. In a way, that's correct too. I mean, extremists of a certain group will undermine the availability of the average person to align with that certain group. There's no better way to prove feminism to be a terrible idea than by quoting famous feminists like Dworkin. I mean, a lot of people will then say, yeah, no, but this is extreme. We don't think that. Yeah, fair enough. You might not. But these are the founding ideologies that modern feminism is based on. On Christianity, guys, have you heard of Nicholas Notovich's book? I have not. The problem isn't the activists, it's the people who listen to them. Actually, Paolo, I kind of disagree, because I really feel that even the activist ones are on average useful idiots. I really think that the people in power are playing along with it. Look at what happened in the United States. When Trump was in power, the problems of BLM and Antifa were swept under the rug. I mean, well, all this shit happened, but it was Trump's fault. The moment Biden came into power, suddenly government officials could stand up against BLM and Antifa terroristic actions. No, not doing that great a job in my humble opinion, but they're doing way more now than they did when Trump was still president. So it's the problem isn't the activists. The activists are useful idiots. The problem is the people in power that use them to gain, for whatever way, more power. Okay, thank you for the link. I will look at that at a later date. I'm opening it now, but I'm going to look at that at a later date because I tend to go all over the place again. The problem we are seeing with the push for alternative genders, I'm going to go back to this a little bit, is, as I said earlier, basically an attack on the four olds. Now, can I find back what the four olds are? I think I have the image somewhere. Come on. I should really make a better time of organizing my streams better, because I have all the information, but I have it all over the place, so that's never a good idea. There you go. Now I have to do this, that. I'm sorry, guys. It's one of the problems of being an idiot. Which, in all fairness, I really should have done this better. I should have prepared this better. So, and I can only blame myself for this. Why can't I find you now? Come on. Yep. Here we go again. Okay. Now, I'm hoping, yeah, I'm going to do it slightly different than that. First, I'm going to show you this, guys. The top bracket of this image is about the four olds. The rest of it will become apparent in a moment. I'm going to try to reshape this image so that I'm merely showing the four olds, because that's what I want to talk about now. Oh, for fuck's sake. Sorry, people. OBS is really useful, but at times it's very annoying. Okay, going to do it like this because I can't do it better than that. Now, if we look at the four olds are old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits. Is this important to remember? Yes, it's very important to remember. Why? Because a combination of these four is what a society is. Hi there, Renovatio, by the way. I think people are responsible for their own actions. On this, I can totally agree with you, Renovatio. The problem is, however, I fear that most of the people, and I still think they are responsible for what they're doing, but I really think that a lot of these people do not realize what they're doing. They're not doing it out of malice, not in the way that we perceive it to be, but they're doing it because, well, in all fairness, they don't seem to be knowing any better, which is a very weird way of looking at it, but unfortunately it seems to be very accurate. And I'm not sure if we can blame people for doing that. The forefathers, well, let me try to explain why the concept of the four olds is also responsible for the problem we are seeing when it comes to gender identity, and indeed all other forms of strange identities we are having now. I mean, people coming out as being of a different ethnicity. Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, if identity politics has proven anything, it's that everything must be a social construct. And if everything must be a social if everything must be a social construct, well, then what is society? Thank you for that. I'm feeling rather okay. Personally, I think I'm okay. It's just warm. I don't deal well with the heat, but I can't put the airco on because it makes a lot of noise, which is a shame, really. Now, if we look at the four olds, old ideas, old culture, old customs, and old habits, items such as religious symbols, old scripture, traditional dresses, this is all true. This is all true in what happened in Mao's China. But look at it in Europe. Look at it in America. The concept of a marriage between a man and a woman is an old idea, an old custom, an old habit, and an old culture. So it had to go. Am I against gay people marrying? No, inherently I don't really have a problem with it. But it is an attack on the four olds. So if you force it on people, it's a problem. Well, that's an interesting story indeed, Ludicrous. I'm sorry. A guy in Northern Ireland just won a lawsuit against the NHS because of discrimination. He put up gay pride posters around his office and the manager took them down. He just got £2,000. I'm pretty sure if he would have put up posters of white supremacy, he would not have won and he would not have gotten £2,000. But inherently, it's the same thing. Should the NHS open the doors for political speech of their employees? Personally, I think the answer to that is no. But apparently, the judges in Northern Ireland disagree. You have to disagree with me, Renovacia. Just look at the issue of trans women in sports. Feminists were driving their hate ideology into male spaces for decades to destroy men. Suddenly, they care when it happens to them. Well, some feminists, intersectional feminists, are perfectly fine with men performing in women's sports. They all know what they are doing. They love to see their enemies suffer from their actions. Only now they complain. Well, yes, self-interest is indeed a large part of it, but this also shows that a lot of these people are nothing but useful idiots. They push their ideology because they want to achieve something without realizing what it is they are pushing for. And when then what they pushed for is actually happening, well, they lose it. Because they never wanted that to happen. But it's literally what they asked for. It's literally what they stood for. Again, this is a great example of the attack on the four olds and why a lot of these people are indeed useful idiots. Sleep well, Michael Keller. I don't think I'm going to make it much longer myself because I notice I'm repeating myself a little bit. When you are working, you are not yourself, you are your function. Well, yes, indeed. The push for alternative genders comes from the same background as the push for men in women's sport, comes from the same background that men are bad, women are good, comes from the same background that everything in the world is bad because of white people, comes from the same background that basically wants to destroy our society. Transgenders, transracialists are no more than just another tool to destroy Western culture. Our disdain should not be for the transgenders or the people with alternative genders or the people with alternative. They do not earn our disdain. They should earn our compassion. We should try to show them the nuance of what they're going for and what it will turn out to be. But even nowadays, most women will not speak out against men in women's sports because they want to be good mensch. They don't want to be seen as being negative towards trans people. Which is completely understandable, but at the same time, very dangerous. We have to be able, them as well to me as well to them, we have to be able to criticize each other. The moment criticism isn't allowed is the moment our society is dying. And unfortunately, that moment has been with us for decades. There are many other subjects where criticism is simply disallowed. We are seeing a push of alternative genders because we are in the midst of a war against Western culture. And the people with alternative genders are nothing but tools being used by the ones that want to destroy our society. Most of them are unaware of the position they have been put in. With that, I will end my talk on this topic. If anyone has questions or otherwise wants to say something, obviously, criticism as always is more than welcome. And let me know what you think. And if you want to join in the talk on this side, you're also more than welcome. I'll give people a moment to respond. And if people don't, I'm going to call it quits, because I am an old fart and I am tired. And you may have noticed that I'm coughing a little bit. It's not because I'm sick, but it's because it's so bloody warm here and I really can't deal with the heat. And I really want to put the airco on, but then I have to open a window and I'm pretty sure I'll get bugs inside, and I don't want bugs inside either. By the way, Dimitri, thank you for the link to Nicolas Notovic. I will look into that one because I am curious. I don't agree with you, Ludicrous. Tolerance is great, but when some blah blah blah. I will say right up front, I have a huge problem with tolerance. Tolerance is probably the main cause we are in this problem. Tolerance is not a good thing. Acceptance is, tolerance is not. Have a great, better one, everybody, according to Green Badger. Green Badger, thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you all next time. And thank you, Davey. I hope I will sleep well. And I hope to see you